Hey there, Christy with Automation on a Mission, and we are ready for our next Tidbit Tuesday. And in this one, we're going to talk about using conditional logic when building forms. Now, this is a really cool opportunity to take something that could be really big and daunting and overwhelming for a client that doesn't necessarily have to be, and turn it into something that's a little bit more bite-sized, digestible for them, simply based on how they respond to questions. So a good use case might be, let's say, for example, you are asking a series of questions, but not all the questions are applicable to the person who's filling out the form. Like, if you said that your favorite color is blue, for example, I'm going to only show you a set number of questions. Or maybe you're more about qualifying someone, and if they answer a question a specific way, you're going to disqualify them, and maybe you stop the form, for example. So what I mean by that is, maybe in your business you want to know, let's say you work with businesses and you only work with businesses who have a team of 5 people or more. You can disqualify somebody from continuing the form based on how they answer a question of how large is your team, or how much revenue are you making in your business, those kinds of questions. So in our case, in Automation on a Mission, one of the places where we've used conditional logic in the past is around our intake forms. So when somebody starts working with us and we may ask the question, do you want us to build a new website for you? And in that case, then I'm going to have a series of questions specifically related to your website. Maybe it's about who your hosting provider is. Maybe it's about, are we building a whole new site from scratch, or are we transferring an existing site? And depending on how you answer the first question determines what your follow-up questions are. So you've got a ton of functionality around this conditional logic. And the reason why it can be beneficial is, using our intake form as an example, let's say we ask you 100 questions in total, but you only really need to answer 40 of them based on how you've answered, one key question, for example. So and then all of a sudden that big giant form is not so big and scary and intimidating, because you're only answering questions that are applicable to you. You don't have to skip things. So we're going to dive in by clicking on our sites, and we're going to go to forms, and I'm going to click on the builder. It takes you by default here, and I'm going to say add a new form, and I'm going to say start from scratch. And I'm going to go to my custom fields. Let's say, for example, this is exactly what I need to have here. I'm going to reduce some clutter here. And then I want to see additional information. Let's see, what do we have? Okay, so what do you have is for your favorite color. Now, this is a perfect example of careful what you ask for. And the reason I say that is because this is not a drop-down box. And I only know that because I did a little bit of testing and stuff before I started the video. So what that means, though, is that you also want to be mindful of the kind of custom field you're using as your conditional logic. And so what I mean by that is, as a text box, somebody can answer this any number of ways. And here's a perfect example. How do you spell gray? Do you spell gray G-R-A-Y, or do you spell gray G-R-E-Y? So if somebody misspells a word, abbreviates a word, does that really impact how that conditional logic works? So something just sort of to be mindful of, to be attentive to. And then I'm going to say, let's see, what else do we have here? And let's just say we're going to use lead magnet name as our next field. All right, so we've got 2 added fields to our thing. And then you'll see up here, you've got this little icon that's got like some squares with lines connecting them, and that is where we apply conditional logic. So when it comes to using our conditional logic, we can do a couple of different things. And so the first thing that you're going to do is decide what happens when. Fill in the blank, okay? So do you want them to go to a specific URL if they answer a question a certain way? Do you want to disqualify them? So I gave you the example of, maybe you're in a place where you want to qualify a lead based on how much money they're making in their business. Maybe you want to qualify a lead by how much money are you willing to spend, or what is your budget. That's just sort of an example. It could be things like the size of your team. It could be things like, do you have a marketing budget? It could be all kinds of things. It doesn't have to be measured by revenue or dollars. It could be measured by some other thing. But what you're doing is ultimately, so here's another one. We definitely struggle with being able to use all the tools in the system with MLM businesses. So maybe something that we would ask is as a disqualifier is your business an MLM? Or are you a part of a franchise? Things like that might say, okay, well, we don't actually want to work with you. Not that we can't. I'm just giving that as an example. Just for the record, we don't disqualify. I just manage expectations differently. Maybe I want to give a specific custom message. And then the last one, which is probably the most common, is show and hide specific fields. So remember, when I created or started building this form, I pulled out 2 custom fields. One was my what's your favorite color, and the other one was my lead magnet, because those 2 things just happen to be available. So I'm going to use that as my sample. And then what I'm going to say is, if on the favorite question, you have something like, and notice that I've got a bunch of different choices here. Maybe I just want you to put something. I want you to say is equal to, and let's say we're going to say if your favorite color is equal to blue, then we want to show our lead magnet name field. Now these 2 fields, use your imagination, pretend that there's an actual relationship here. And what that means is that if someone views this form and puts yellow in their as their response, it's not going to show this particular field, lead magnet name. So I'm going to save that, and now my custom logic is my conditional logic is showing right here, and I can edit it in the future. I can also remove that custom logic. So now I'm going to save all that, and notice it's still there. And then I'm going to save my form, and I'm going to click on my form link because I want you to see it. So we saw for that quick second that lead magnet question, but notice that it disappears. So I'm going to say Christy Stafford, Christy at automationonamission.com, and then I'm going to say blue, and now all of a sudden it shows up. Yellow, it doesn't show up. So fortunately, and I really honestly wasn't sure what was going to happen if I chose to use blue as a uppercase versus lowercase. Fortunately, it's not case sensitive, but if I said red, that field goes away. So the only way that we can see that field is if we give it the magic answer it's looking for. So that's essentially how you go about utilizing conditional logic. I can also do it where, I say if the respondent says blue, it disqualifies them, or it sends them to a particular URL. All right, so that's how you use conditional logic in the forms. I hope this is helpful, and if it inspires follow-up questions, feel free to ask. Tag me in your response. We'd always love to help sort of see how you can utilize this in your business and make sure that we're able to fill in all the blanks. Thank you as always.